Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
We now turn to Christiana McBride, who is a trans woman and a board member of PFLAG here in Salisbury. Welcome to the program.
Hey, how you doing?
So, first of all, what was your reaction to the fact that Bailey Ann Kennedy, the first trans woman, wins Miss Maryland USA? I mean, I think for that matter, it's probably a first in the nation for that matter.
Yes, she's not the first person to apply for it. I think there was like a Miss Universe back in like 2018, 2019. She didn't get far, but she did.
But this one won.
Yes. I was ecstatic, honestly. I remember seeing it online, and I was like, okay, wow, like, let me post this here on my side. I was like, yeah, like, this is great. I did get some backlash from some friends and family. I was a little floored about that because I'm like, hey, y'all know me. I'm very open with stuff. I'm very, I'm like an open book when it comes to stuff like this. And basically, there was some people that said some stuff. Some of my cousins said some stuff, and I was like, wow. But I did had to sit back and think about it for about 15, 20 minutes. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to repost it and justify why I'm posting it and explain to them why. I did talk about myself a little bit. I did talk about just the community. It was just like a little brief. It was a little more than a brief, but it was at least a couple paragraphs. And for most of it, nobody really said anything negative, but I did have a lot of people say some things that were positive on the flip side. I guess it was more because I had a lot to say about the subject, and I was very thankful for it. And I was like, hey, this is great. There was some people saying, well, why don't they just have a trans beauty contest? And I was like, this is true, we could do something like that too, but some people just want to be able to blend into society and want to kind of, how do I say this? I don't want to say just be normal, because it's like, what is normal?
Right.
So it was more about like, we just want to be, we just want to exist. And a lot of it was just saying, what did I say in the post? I'm trying to think offhand what I said. I basically said, hey, like, a lot of us are just trying to make it home. We're just trying to raise our kids. Like me, I'm a single parent. I raised my kids from since 2012 when my partner passed away. I had an 18-month-old and like a 5-year-old. I've been raising them ever since. They never left my side. They've been living with me since day one. Heck, my youngest he's been with me since like came out of the womb. Granted, both of them have been, but I was one. With my youngest, I gave him his first feeding.
What do you think it means that you talk about some people suggest that there be something separate, but the fact that it's not separate, that this is something that in which there's a recognition of trans women within this generalized community of women in general. I mean, I think that's one of the things I walked away from it.
Yeah, there is. There are people that are going to say that, but at the end of the day, honestly, we're just trying to exist. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to take anybody's title. We're not trying to be We're not trying to be better than anybody. We're just trying to exist. That's all. We're people. When you really break it down, we're people, just like everybody else. We know we're not like what they would call cisgendered women. But also, too, everybody forgets this. What about trans guys? Nobody talks about trans guys. There's plenty of trans athletes. I'm quite sure there'll be a trans guy that does get recognized in something. So where is that? Why we focus so much on trans women opposed to everybody else? Like, what's the big deal?
So one of the things, by the way, that has struck me is that we're seeing really in many ways, an emergence of trans women in society and in public. For instance, the latest obviously is Sarah McBride. She's a state senator out of Delaware, running for first congressional seat. She's raised a chunk of money. Looks like she could actually win it. I can't imagine what the reaction of Marjorie Taylor Greene will be if she gets there, but I asked her about that, by the way, and she said, "Well, I don't know. Well, we'll see."
Yeah, Sarah's a very nice lady.
Yeah,
I've met her on a few
Yeah.
occasions. Very nice. She went to was it American University.
Mhm.
She's just trying to make her mark on things. She's from Wilmington, Delaware. She's come down here a couple times. I know she's a little busy. I wanted her to come to some of our meetings. I also run along with PFLAG. I'm part of PFLAG, but I run a small group here in Salisbury called Salisbury Trans Alliance. There's a couple of us. There's one in Rehoboth. There's one in Dover, but I'm the only one here in Salisbury. And I run it with my girl Kathy Carpenter. But yeah, we've tried to get her to come down a couple of times. I really would like to see Sarah come down here, but I know she's in Delaware, so getting her to come to Maryland.
And she's campaigning. She got a lot on her mind right now.
Yes, yes.
But I mean, it's striking that you're making that there are all these strides. I mean, you see it even from time to time in television shows. We've seen it on reality shows. I think Big Brother, had a trans woman at one point. It does seem as if we're seeing more and more public images.
It's not the first time.
Yeah.
We had a
yeah.
tennis player back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
We had, oh God, I'm trying to think offhand. Matter of fact, there was also a show on the Jefferson. There was an episode. Granted, it wasn't played by a trans person. It was played by a cisgender woman. But, we have been around. It's just we're talked about a little bit more because we've been a little bit more visible. I see this to a lot of people. Look at the gays in the 80s and 90s. Look at all the ridicule that they went through. And I say, like, this is our 80s and 90s era for a lot of trans people. Do I think that we're going to have 100% support? No. I always feel like there's going to be somebody or a group of people that are not going to be in support of us. There's always going to be that, and that's because of a lack of knowledge, lack of information. And a lot of times, too, you have the internet, which you don't always get the whole facts. And like, for instance, you have TikTok, you have stuff on Facebook. Not everything on Facebook is true. Not everything on TikTok is true, and it's done for views. Same thing, YouTube, Instagram, they're all for views. A lot of times I tell people, it's like, look, if you could find somebody who is trans, or if there's a group, go and sit down and talk with them and just see, just pick their brain. Not everybody is going to be as open, but you're going to find a couple of us that are open to just sitting down and talking with you. And you'll find that we're normal people.
What do you make of the backlash that we're now going through simultaneously with the emergence of the public faces of war? Everything from banning books, obviously attempt to ban like drag shows, for example, amongst other things. What do you make of that? I mean, do you think that was inevitable that as you emerge, you're going to get a lot of this pushback? I mean,
yeah, and the drag shows are. I'm going to touch on the drag shows a little bit.
Yeah.
That's something that was. I'm going to say that it's more for entertainment.
Right.
I'm not saying that kids should be watching drag shows. I mean, look, if you want your kids to watch, that's your own prerogative. I have nothing against that, but it's for entertainment. It's not like it's a big thing. And a lot of trans people, there are some people that are trans, that identify as trans, that do perform drag, but as a whole, we're not. We don't dress up for performance. We dress for ourselves, just like any other woman. When she gets up in the morning, she dresses for herself. She doesn't dress for anybody else. Maybe some of her girlfriends if she wanted to go out and look cute. Because, I do that sometimes too. I'm going out with my friends. Like this past Saturday, we went to Leon's and, I went to dress cute and be with some of my girls. And, we had a little fun. But as a whole, we don't trust for nobody else.
Right. I mean, what do you make of the fact that there's this effort to really sort of write you off? With schools and books, and I mean, there's a lot of political rhetoric that surrounds that.
I mean, as a whole, I feel like people just don't want to be educated on things. That's really what it comes down to. There's a lot of things that are going on today in time that they are trying to erase history in general. Like, look at stuff like the Holocaust, slavery, things that are really part of America that are just being, wiped out. I think it's despicable because now you're having a whole generation of kids that are not getting educated and learning their history. They're not learning, hey, this happened in the past. It's not something that's new. Does
it make you fearful? I mean, but both. I mean, particularly, like, say, physically as well as perhaps socially. I mean, I don't know.
Anytime I step out the house, I'm always fearful. Like, I can hear my mom. It's like, just be careful when you go out places. This, that. Be careful about who you're dating. And yes, that's always a fear of mine and any person, of any I'm gonna say marginalized community. It really. Yeah, because you don't know who you're going to run into. You don't know who's going to see you. You don't know if they know you from, hey, like, look at here, and I'm, Salisbury. Here in the university, like, they might know or see you and might not like you for some odd reason, which is sad in a way because, like, hey, this person that, you're hating against or you're attacking or you're trying to kill, that could be your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, your parent. It could be anybody in your family. And that's why I say to people, like, sit down and talk, because until you bring that human aspect, you're just really not going to get it. Like, a lot of people aren't going to get it until it hits home. A lot, like, look at, I'll say, for instance, growing up, my dad was ex-Marine, and he was a little homophobic. And I remember as a kid in the 80s, like, being a little, just trying to be myself. And I remember my dad would say, like, oh, I'm going to, like, bust your butt for doing that and da-da-da. And, that was just normal for back then. But I'm quite sure today in time, if he was still around, he'd be supportive of me. Because you're bringing that aspect of, hey, look, this is my child at the end of the day. Same thing with my brother. My brother was very homophobic. And now this kid is supporting me. Like, I didn't expect him to support me when I came out, like, 8 years ago. I'm going to say this. He still talks about this. Like, when I came out, I went on Facebook Live. And I was talking to one of our friends. His name was Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
And he posted something online. Hey, like, Christiana, da-da-da. And my brother thought that he was making fun of me. So my brother was like, he went to his house to beat the crap out of him. And I was like, whoa. I was like, wait a minute, hold on. Like, he was supportive. He was like, okay, cool. And I was floored because I was like, wow, like, my own brother, like, that I didn't think that was going to support me or was, going to see, me as who I am as a sister. Was literally going to, go toe to toe with somebody. So that's the thing too. Like, a lot of times when you bring that aspect of, this is, a sibling, and this is somebody in your family, potentially, it makes you think differently.
Have you personally experienced any violence? I mean, I remember I talked to one trans person up in Delaware, and they had indicated that they had at least one incident in which they experienced that, but I don't know.
I'm going to say this. I haven't really experienced, like, violence per se, like, against me. I've had people say stuff to me. Okay. Like, for instance, I was on a boardwalk one day walking, and this is, like, probably 2017, and there was these group. I want to say they're teenagers or in their early 20s, and walking. I was probably right by Thrashers, and it was like, oh my God, it's a tranny on the boardwalk, a tranny on the boardwalk, and they're like pointing, and I'm like, oh Lord, and I just was like, you know what, I'm just gonna ignore them, and I'm just gonna keep on walking,
Right.
and just keep it moving, and that's really what I had to do.
Have you known others who may have experienced this, or
Yes,
this? I don't know whether it's assault or I don't know exactly.
yes. I mean,
Instances still. In Maryland and Delaware, I guess, right?
I mean, there have been a couple. I can't put my finger on it right now, but
sure.
there have been some instances with people alleging that this has happened. And with some of them, I can't say. I have one girl right now that she has alleged a few times that this has happened. She's actually one of our girls. I'm not going to say her name,
Sure.
but I'm going to say this here, that we had an incident one time in Ocean City. I don't know how true it was, but it did go to court, where she was alleging that this person said something to them and kind of followed them into the gym. And there was a couple accounts where she said, hey, this person tried to take a swing at me and missed, and he did walk in there and followed me to the women's restroom, and there was one that's like saying that he followed her just to the entrance, and that was it. We did go to court. We did get a temporary restraining order. I'm going to say that with air quotes, temporary. But I don't think anything can really spawn from that as a whole.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. But your own experience, when did you realize that you weren't who you were identified as? Obviously this takes place, sort of awareness. Even at an early age.
As a kid,
yeah. Go ahead.
I'm gonna say this here, and I said this to a lot of people who are very religious, and they like look at it a little bit differently. But I look at it like I'm not a real I'm not a real religious person, but I do believe in God. But as a kid, I remember going to bed at night, and I would pray to God every single night. And I was like, God, make me a woman with boobs and a hoo-ha. Yeah. And I would do that every single night. And, I did, grow up. I got married. I actually met my college sweetheart in college. She actually thought I looked cute and dressed up. I had to go to court for something. I'm just going to say that.
That's right.
It was a traffic violation.
Well, hey, we all have those.
Yeah. So we ended up dating for 4 years, and when we got married, it was 2005. We had kids, and when she passed away in 2012, I did a lot of soul searching, because I started looking back on things, and it's like, this is what I was doing when I was with her. Like, she was finding things around the house that was very feminine, like clothing and whatnot. She didn't really care, because after a certain point, she was like, you know what, just do whatever you want to do. Like, I used to sneak clothes and all the time. Like, I would literally say, hey, look, I'm going to the store for a second. And because I lived in Cape Coral, Florida, and I would go down to New York and Company and Naples, Florida, or Fort Myers, and just buy clothes, and just okay, hey, you have this size, great, I'm gonna go and get it real quick. Right. But I knew something even then. I just couldn't put my finger on it. And I remember 2012 to 2013, I started doing a lot of soul searching. I was like, why do I feel this way? Why is this? Why is that? And I did revert back to when I was a kid. I started thinking about that, and I was like, you know what? I did pray for this. Let me look up stuff. And it took me a couple years to really see, do all my research. And then after I did all that, I did some more research, because I was like, what about if I did come out? Do I have to worry about getting my kids taken away from me? Stuff like that. I was a little nervous about that. I was like, what are they going to say? But, make a long story short, it was okay for me to transition, and I ended up moving here to Maryland back in 2014. So everything was okay. But I ended up transitioning medically in 2016.
So the medical transition, which is fairly traumatic in the sense of like, uh, what was that decision making like? I mean, to come to that point where not just simply that you identify, which is okay, but now you're doing something to your own body that's going to be changing it. That's a pretty heavy decision to make. I mean,
Yes.
it's not something you like, do. You're going to say, "Oh, today I'm going to do X," right?
Yes, that was something that I had to, and I was like, what, 32, 33? I realized. So I started my medical part when I was like, I'd say 34.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had to go through a doctor, a therapist. I remember going to my primary care doctor. I was terrified. Terrified. Like I sat in that chair. I was like, okay, this is that, and she's like, okay, cool. She gave me a hug and she gave me a diagnosis and say, hey, well, you need to see your diagnosis to go to your to a doctor to get hormones. I was like, okay. So I went to Chase Brexton in December of 2016, I believe. Yeah, I was terrified. I literally, because I walked in there thinking like, they're going to say, no, you're not trans, you're not this, you're not that. And so like, I literally like dressed up like heels, stockings, everything. And I was like, oh boy. I was like, how is this going to turn out? But it was a couple of doctors. It was a nice, it was a little process back then. And Nick came back and it was like, okay, here, this is your prescription for everything, and here you go. Now, when it comes to surgery, that was another thing.
Right.
I definitely had to go through a therapist for that, and a psychologist. My therapist, she kind of knew. She was like, okay. After a few months, she knew. It's like, okay, you know, I don't really need to. Here's your letters for everything, for name change, all that stuff. Then for the other part, for my insurance, for me to cover it, I had to get another one from a psychologist, and that was a little nerve wracking because I remember driving up there. I think I had to rent a car because I had to put my car in the shop, and I walked into this lady's office, and I'll tell you the truth, I like blurted out everything my whole entire life. Like I was like, this is this, and she just was like, let me go for 2 minutes at least. Okay, I want to see a good solid 2 minutes. And then she's like, stop, I'll write your letter. I was like, oh, because like in my head I'm thinking like it's gonna take a while, and I walked in there not thinking that I'm gonna get emotional. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna get emotional. I'm gonna handle this. I'm gonna be like, yeah, no. I cried like a baby, like literally.
So once you had the transition, what was that like? I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly the question I'm looking for, but
Yeah.
I mean,
What did it feel like?
yeah. I guess that's
I was
really
free.
good. Yeah.
I was free. I didn't have to try to pretend that I was something I didn't feel like I was. Like even going back as a kid, I remember going to the prom and I was so jealous of like some of my friends. I was like, oh my God, I want that dress. I want this. I want to get my hair done. I always wanted that. And I was like I should be wearing the dress, not the suit. So, being able to do that, I was like, wow, like I'm free. I don't have to try to pretend that I'm something that society wants me to be. I'm me. I'm doing it for me, not for nobody else.
So, what would you say to young folks particularly young trans people? They're looking ahead at their lives. Obviously, some of them may be on puberty blockers. Physical transitions may be a ways away for them. They're trying to figure out who they are, and obviously, we have a whole slew now of fluidity from one end to the other. Which
That's something that has to be handled case by case because everybody's gonna be different. I feel like if I wasn't like an elder millennial or if I wasn't more of like one of these younger Gen Z kids, I would definitely be like a Jazz Jennings. I actually met her her mom. She's a lovely lady. Um, but I know I would have transitioned younger. Now I can't say for everybody. Everybody's different. I definitely say, like, you definitely do your soul searching and figure out what you feel like you need to do. Um, Surgery doesn't have to be for everybody. Some people just want to identify, which can mean just throwing on a T-shirt or an outfit. That might be their extent of their transition, and that's fine. Um, they might want to have some hormones or some. And I tell people, it's like, just make sure you look up and see what are the long term, what you're going to go through with all these hormones, because some of them are irreversible.
Right.
So, for instance, for a trans guy, their voice deepens very quickly, like 3 to 4 months. And once that drops, you can't really get that back. I mean, yes, you can go through um, like a surgery, which is more like kind of like what I went through. It was called a windoglotoplasty, which is basically a shortening of the vocal folds. Um, but not everybody's gonna have the resources to do that. So I tell people, like, just make sure you do your research, um, and this is something that you need to do. I would like to say it has to be medically needy for yourself. It has to be something that is a necessity, not something that you just want to do on a whim. Something that you need to have done.
Mm.
Like for me, all my surgery, anything I've had done was something I needed for my own self, for me to feel whole, not for me to go out and say, hey, like this. No, I did it for me. And that's why I tell anybody, you have to do it for yourself. You can't do it for nobody else. And you have to know, yes, there are going to be people who are going to ridicule you. I mean, I dealt with that my whole entire life, and that's why I always tell people, like, I talk to people about like, you heard like Dave Chappelle talk about stuff, and not everybody likes Dave Chappelle, but I found him funny. But he was talking about his friend that was trans, and I think she was also a comedian too, that committed suicide. And he always said trans is tough road ahead. Even though he's joking and he's making fun of us, he was kind of making. I feel, I'm saying this here, man. Not everybody in the community is gonna say this here. I feel like it's bringing some kind of normalcy to it. Like, we got to make fun of ourselves too. We have to have respect for people like me and everybody else. But I mean, we have to be able to make fun of ourselves. Like, I make fun. Like, I joke around with my kids. Like, we talk about stuff all the time, but it's across the board. But getting back with that is that you have to be able to. You have to have a strong mindset. You have to. Um, Otherwise, it's really it's going to be tough.
Just finally and briefly, are you optimistic about the future?
Yes, yes, I have to be. I have to be. You know, I have a lot of people in my life that can be a little pessimistic, and I tell them, it's like, you know what, put things out there. I said, this might be a little weird for everybody. I said, put things out in the universe. Put things out there, and just put that out, that positive. And if you put out positive, you're going to get positive. You got to think like that. If you're always thinking like doom and gloom, then that's what you're going to get. You're going to get doom and gloom. But if you're thinking positive, you're going to get positive things that's going to come your way. I tell people all the time, it's like, look at me. Like, as a kid, I'm ADD. I went to a school for kids who had ADD. I was made fun of because of that. I had my struggles. I mean, a lot of my friends were in New York because it was a private school. So I didn't really get to hang out with a lot of my friends. I made do with what I had, and sometimes you got to do that. It's not easy, and I like to say it like that. It's not easy. I don't like saying things are hard, because psychologically, when you say things are hard, your brain shuts down. You stop working. So when you say it's not easy, you are tricking your mind to say, hey, you know what? This is going to be a challenge, but it's doable. So you definitely have to put that out there and just be a little optimistic. Realistic too, but
A
optimistic.
little realism, yeah. We've been speaking with Christiana McBride. She is a trans woman, also a board member of PFLAG here in Salisbury, and also
Trans Lions.
Trans
Salisbury
Lions as well.
Tribe.
Trans Lions. So appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
Oh, yeah, anytime.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.